Okay, so in this video we'll look at retopology and how we actually retopologize mesh. In class you saw the theory behind it, but as a quick summary, when you create objects, especially when you sculpt them, they have way too many vertices. Every vertex takes up some amount of memory on your computer. So if you want to put this mushroom in a video game, this mushroom has 241,000 vertices. It will essentially cause lag. The mushroom on the right here has 322 vertices. So this mushroom would require much less memory to have in your scene. So what do you do if you want to sculpt an object, if you want to create an organic object, but you actually want to throw it into a video game? Well, you have to retopologize. So to get started, you want to move your 3D cursor somewhere on the object, and you want to create a plane. Size it down so it's, small, and then go into the edit mode of the plane. Then what you want to do is turn on your snapping at the top, but you want to snap to face. And now you want to grab your vertices and kind of snap them on top of this mushroom. Okay, so the plane is now kind of tracing the mushroom. I will go into this solid viewport shading so I can kind of see it a little bit better without the colors. And in this mode, I can then go over here on the right hand side where it says object, scroll down to where it says viewport display, and I can check this in front. So now, even though my plane here is behind kind of the mushroom, I can still see it. Okay, so I have my new plane, and now what do? Well, what I can do now is I can select these two edges, press E to extrude, and then move my new vertices around. And I can keep doing this, and this is retopology. The problem is selecting all these faces, extruding, moving around is kind of annoying, very slow. So on the left hand side here, you actually have a bunch of tools, and one of them is called Polybuild. If you click on it, now what you have, if I move my mouse around, you can see that sometimes the edges are blue, sometimes the vertex is blue. If I hold Shift, now the face is red. And if I hold Control and I move my mouse kind of in between three vertices, you can see that it's kind of forming like a triangle. So this retopology tool will help us retopologize much faster. Okay, so how do we work it? Well, red, if you hold Shift, that will delete a face. If you can also delete a vertex. And to build more, you just left click and drag. So I just left click, drag, and I can keep kind of dragging out geometry. Here, when I want to connect the circle, I can bring these very close to each other, but you'll notice they're not snapping together, they're still two separate things. So here on the right top hand side, I can click on Auto Merge Vertices, and under Options I can play around with the threshold. So depending on the object that you're retopologizing, you might want to play around with these numbers so that you actually get a connection, and there you kind of saw the connection, it merged the vertices. I can show it again, so I delete a face, I extend this one out, and then you see it automatically connected to the top one, same with the bottom one, boom. And from here, when I have my first kind of circle, I can drag off this bottom bit to go at the bottom. And now what do? Well, I can drag off a new edge right here and connect it to the top there. Right, so I can just drag a new one, just connect it. Or, and this is the better way, hold Control in between these three vertices and then just drag off. So Control and drag, Control, drag, and then the last one, connect, so they merge. And while you're going through this, you want to kind of adjust your mesh so that it's semi-even. Okay, and then now at the top here, this is kind of where it will get a little bit complicated. At the top, you can kind of get into this cycle where you just keep extruding in this way, and then you'll never kind of reach an end. So what you want to do instead at the top is find two adjacent faces. Let's just say these two. You can connect them. And then I'm going to connect the others. And so now I connected the top. It could happen to you, and most likely this is what happened to most of you. It could happen that when you try doing what I just did, this would be the result. So I can connect the top one, for example, but then for the bottom one here, if I connect it right there, then I have a hole right here. And you want to avoid triangles, right? There's 3 vertices. I don't have a 4th vertex. So in that case, you kind of have to play around with the mesh and see what you can do. So for example, if I have a hole right there, I can either delete this edge, right? So if this is causing issues, I can just go out of my poly build, select this edge, and then dissolve it. And now I can connect that one. Or what you can do is add another loop cut right here, for example. And then you can see that you can connect those two. That's good. I do have a gap right here. I can connect these two, so that's good. I do have a gap right here, but I can then add a loop cut right here and then connect them like that. Okay, so that will be the hardest part of retopology, connecting the holes in your mesh. That will be the hardest part of this. It's essentially a puzzle. Then you can keep going, and so I'll just speed run this. Actually, what you see here, right here, what happened to me, is it's trying to snap to the other side. And so if this keeps happening to you, what you can do is you can enable back face culling right underneath here, back face culling. And so now this should happen much less often. And as a kind of like a trick or an easier way to do this, is you don't have to add all of these details in right away. So here at the bottom, I just extrude from the edge to the kind of the stick here, and then from here I'll just extrude it all the way down, and then I fill in the rest, and I'll show you how you can add more details. Okay, so I have my bottom bit, and I'll connect the bottom as well. Okay, so how do I add more detail in here? Well, you can just add a loop cut. So I added my loop cuts, but you'll see that it's not actually doing anything. It's still like a stick. So if you go into object mode and then you go into your modifiers tab, you can find, and for you guys it will be different, but over here there's a modifier called shrink wrap, and now it's red. The modifier is in red because it's not yet working, and so you just have to give it a target. So the shrink wrap modifier will shrink wrap whatever we want to whatever we want. So we want to shrink wrap this mushroom that we just created, our low poly, onto our high poly. So I just grab the eyedrop tool and then click on the high poly one, and you can now see that that shape is being transferred. So going back into the edit mode, I can also enable this button right here so I actually see it in edit mode. I can add more loop cuts if I want more detail. So say I want more detail down there, up here, and then I don't know, maybe I can add a few more loop cuts there so I get more of that shape. And you'll know where you need more shape when you look at the silhouette. So like right now I'm looking at the silhouette where my mouse is. So my low poly is on the left, my high poly is on the right, and you can see that if I add more loop cuts and I add the loop cut right here, it will kind of hug it a little bit more. And you don't have to be precise. It depends on the object you're making. For example, mushroom, if you're in the game, you will probably look at it from like this far away. So it won't be that obvious. You don't need to go crazy with this. The point is to recreate our object with low amount of vertices, so you don't want to overdo it. So I personally think this density is good. Maybe a loop cut right here. So there's our low poly mushroom. You'll notice that if I try to move it now, it kind of does this weird thing. That is because we still have our modifier. We have to apply the modifier first before we can move our low poly object. To apply the modifier, you move your mouse on top of the modifier in object mode, and then you press Control A. And now you have your low poly on the right, high poly on the left. if you shade smooth, so right click, shade smooth, the right one, they essentially look the same. Okay, and so in this case, my low poly is 298 vertices, and still the high poly is 241,000. So much better. Okay, and for your assignment, you will be doing a low poly version of your mushroom that you created in the previous sculpting assignment. So yeah, that's it for this video.